Hey guys, earlier this week, I had the pleasure of talking with Andrew Wolney, the founder of PropNotes. I was made aware of Andrew after a very well written article on Seeking Alpha regarding Nubank as a potential strong buy in Andrew's opinion. At the time of the article, however, Nubank was about $8.80 per share. That was just a couple weeks ago. I wanted to ask Andrew if he's still just as bullish on Nubank, considering the large run-ups in the stock from 880 all the way into the $10+ ranges as of the time we're recording this video. But anyway, enough introductions. Please enjoy the conversation. Andrew, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Seeking Alpha writer from PropNotes, or sorry, you are PropNotes. You wrote wrote about Nubank, and you gave a strong buy on this company at $8.83, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Stock's risen pretty good since then, about 15% or so. You still bullish on the company? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, nothing's really changed. So I think the core of the article that I, tried to sort of present was basically there's three things that are really a huge advantage to Nubank. The first is their big brand, which is, I think people in the business world often don't really they maybe discount the value of brand or things like that. But
sure,
I think in general, Nubank's brand is going to be a huge asset going forward because they've dealt with all of their customers incredibly well, as far as I can tell. They're incredibly highly rated. They have like a net promoter score of like 90 or some ridiculous number.
Yeah.
Which is incredible for any company, let alone a bank. So you've got that element, which leads to extremely low, cost of acquisition, stuff like that. Obviously, they're all online, so it's an incredibly low fixed cost base to service their clientele. And then also they're growing. The growth opportunity here is massive if you sort of include the demographics of, South America or Latin America, things like that. So if you sort of put all those things together, and the fact that, their LTV to CAC is like nuts, and it's like 30x or something like that. And if you add all of those, all those things up, even though it's worth, worth like 48 billion right now. It's pretty expensive, which is, I think, really the only concern you would ever have as an investor. Right now, though, I don't think it going up 15% from where I said strong buy is it's definitely not time to take profits on it.
Sure.
As far as I'm concerned, much higher targets and so on and so forth.
One of the things that you really highlighted in your article was just the total addressable market growth, like the population, the middle class expanding, the internet connectivity expanding. Mm-hmm. What part of that do you think plays into Nubank? Because obviously they have such a large percentage of overall market saturation. I think it's 51% of the Brazilian adult population is a Nubank client. So are you worried about that, or do you think that there's so much total addressable market expansion that, growth may not slow as fast as some bears might think?
I think even if it does slow, it's still worth a whole heck of a lot, right? So if you look at growth, right, I mean, the last quarter was like triple-digit top-line growth year over year. It was like 100%, or no, it was like 88%. I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head, but It's like very, very high double digits. And it's been that way pretty consistently. I think there were maybe 1 or 2 quarters where they only lapped by like 40 or 50%, something like that.
Yeah.
The growth is like nuts, absolutely nuts. Obviously, so it commands sort of a higher premium. But if you look at it from a sort of addressable market situation, they've still got they've really only entered 3 markets, which is Mexico, Colombia, and Brazil. So there's a huge opportunity in other markets like Chile, like Peru. You could argue Argentina. I don't know a ton. I'll just be upfront about that. I don't know a ton about the complexities of potentially starting a banking franchise in Argentina right now. With all the sort of, issues around, are they going to dollarize, yada, yada, yada. But so there's sort of what you could call like horizontal expansion. And then there's also what you have is the vertical expansion within Nubank. So they sort of have this path that they have their customers sort of grow their relationship with the bank with. So they start off using the card or, sort of doing like WhatsApp payments. And then, over time, they start getting checking and savings accounts properly. They'll sort of expand into loans, insurance, so much higher sort of margin, much larger nominal dollar figure sort of products. And it is true that there is some, obviously in Brazil, especially, they have a good amount of the adult population sort of signed up. But once someone signs up, it's not just, they're immediately at full value. So there's horizontal growth, sort of to new regions. Sorry,
That's all
in
good.
London, the police won't cooperate here. I don't know if that's coming through, but yeah. And then the other element is really sort of that vertical element, right? So it's not just, hey, there's sort of a thin margin on maybe, payments or things like that. But once you start getting deposits in, once you start sort of offering loans, consumer credit, things like that, they have their own consumer credit engine, which is super bullish in my opinion, because I think back in like 2008 or 2010, it used to sort of be like a central ledger. And they only recently sort of introduced credit scores. So there isn't this long history of credit scores in the region. That's in Brazil. But, just sort of generally, I think the fact that they have a lot of proprietary customer info is also a huge, huge competitive advantage.
Right.
And then the final thing on that is just the digital, you touched on the digital there. Banking for a long time, I think they're really just running like the classic fintech playbook on an undisrupted market. That's pretty much what it is, right? So there's just tremendous avenues for growth in every direction, and the only concern if you're investing at this point would just be, is the stock too expensive? But I think there's plenty of room.
The classic playbook that some might even say, Nubank might have even created, like early entrant into LATAM, right?
Yeah.
But and largest, by the way, largest fintech in the world in terms of customer count.
Are they? What's their? I don't know that off the top of my head, to be honest.
They have they already surpassed 90 million. I would assume they're like from what my calculation is that they probably have about 96 million customers right now. But unreported. So we'll have to see whenever Q4 actually comes out how far they are. But yeah, in terms of digital banks, they are by far in the lead. By far.
Yeah.
But
I think there's some competition too, but it seems a lot of the competition seems very sort of me too. Like it doesn't seem as spirited. Like from every angle, I think, and there was even a really good comment. I don't know if you saw this in the article, but there was this one guy who, and take this for what you will, there's no way of verifying this, but he was like, yeah, I used to work with a bunch of the people who now work at Nubank. They're all incredibly smart and talented and very, very energized towards their specific goal.
Sure.
Of sort of like bringing everyone into, modern finance essentially. So I think, he just was going on and on and on about that. And I was just like, oh, that's an interesting sort of very human level touch point as well. I think if the team is energized, that's also massively valuable. So
one of the things that you said that I also thought was interesting, you said that one of the biggest risks is governmental in nature. That Nubank may suffer from change in regulation. What exactly did you mean by that in terms of the risks on Nubank?
I think if you look at Nubank generally, I don't see a lot of risk vectors. I don't think it's not, they don't have an investment banking arm that's taking huge swings. They don't, they're growing quickly. All of their customers seem fully satisfied. The profits of Brazil are paying for their expansion into these other markets. Everything is sort of smoothly humming along. And so when you're looking at it, you're like, what could disrupt this? And there's nothing, normally traditional, if I'm writing an article about, something else, it's like, oh, they've got a lot of competition, or, oh, whatever the case may be. Oh, there's a lot of macro factors at play. It's like, this is such a secular growth story. It's like interest rates can go up, interest rates can go down. Things can go well in the economy, things cannot go well. It's literally just, it's such a, I don't want to say, I call it like a tidal wave, but it's just such a tidal wave of like people who are joining the platform, which is why it's growing so quickly. And so if you're looking at risk vectors, you're sort of like, okay, what could hurt, let's say you invest, what right now is trading at, like 10 times the multiple of all the other banks in the region, right? Based on net income and sales and stuff like that, right? It's trading at, I think, here, let me pull it up actually. Do you have the price of sales?
Price to sales is 6.78 according to what I'm reading.
Okay. So it's maybe like 5 times as expensive as some of the cheaper, Banco do Brazil that are all trading like 1 to 2 times. It's much more expensive, and then on earnings it's like 20 and there are 25. Sorry, maybe not 10, maybe like 7, 5, somewhere in there. Sure. But it's much more expensive than all the other banks. So I'm sort of looking at it like, what if the investment, the real risk factor here is sort of, it doesn't seem like a competitor is going to take them out or has the resources to buy them, or sort of squash them in any way, right? Because they're so valuable at this point. So if you're looking at it like what could happen, is they could, all of the regions it operates in. The real risk to me is potentially if they go into a new market and screw it up, right? So if they run afoul of regulations and lose trust with the regulators, that could sort of, it doesn't hurt their current business, but it hurts the multiple, or it hurts the growth, which obviously hurts the multiple. Another thing is, in Brazil, and I did get some flack for that comment, because a lot of the commenters were like, well, actually, it's such, there's only like 4 banks essentially in Brazil up to this point that are competitive. It's, you've got Itaú, or Itaú, I don't know if you know how to pronounce it. Itaú. Okay. Yeah. So you've got them, you've got Banco do Brazil, you've got Bradesco, and you've got the Santander Brazil branch.
Yeah.
And they're kind of the 5th option. And apparently a few years ago, basically government sort of banking regulations were relaxed, which allowed Nubank to come in and sort of, a very, very sort of onerous, regulations. They were sort of peeled back. So, lots of competition could come into the space, which is what's happening, obviously, with Nubank. And the risk that I see is if, rule of law isn't maybe as strong in Brazil as it is in the United States or some other places. So if, maybe there's some lobbying pressure, or even if someone just sits down one day and goes, what, actually, consumers need more protection, and, our banking regulations were fine the way it was. That might be sort of onerous from a regulatory standpoint, and that could hurt, or things like that. So that's really, if you're just looking at it holistically, that's the main risk vector is from the government. And so if any of the current tailwinds that were provided by sort of the peeling back of those regulations abate, or, sort of turn around, and that's a potential risk to the bank. But I don't think it's really a growth risk. I think it's just sort of a profitability risk. And then if you include the other regions, it's just sort of a mix. But there's just really no competitors that I see, and I don't think that it's sort of the business cycle isn't really a factor as well. So it's just that's sort of where I'm coming from when it comes to assessing risk. But
no, I think that because I just wanted to hear it from your side, because I think there are some, at least just the way that I look at it, there are some real risks in terms of potentially changes to caps on interest rates for credit cards in Brazil, which could massively impact their margins. So I thought, I didn't know if you were talking about that, or if you were saying like potentially they could lose their bank license or so. So I just wanted
I don't think it would ever be like that. I think you just see massively increased sort of regulatory compliance costs, right? So whenever a bank like this, they're not operating loosey-goosey by any nature, but all these sort of oligopoly banks that currently exist and pay like 8 or 9% dividends, which just tell you how profitable they are. When those, they have huge, massive legal departments, they're able to sort of chunk their way through this paperwork that might slow down or otherwise sort of add a lot of operational complexity to Nubank, which is very, it's fresh, it's clean. There's not a lot of, sort of technical debt. I know it's not a tech company, but just sort of operationally, there's not a lot of that. So something to consider.
Yeah, no, I don't think, I think you're 100% right. I don't think that they've proven themselves out in other markets as well, like you were stating. I didn't get to comment on that, but like, I know that they're breaking into Mexico. They have millions of customers, but it's not like you're seeing the total domination like you would in potentially, Brazil. Now that they actually have their new accounts, like the checking and savings products and everything rolling out in Mexico and Colombia, this might be the first time that we actually get to see them expand into really multiple geographies and like take real market share. But even as I say that, I mean, they're the largest issuer of credit cards in all 3 geographies, but still, I want to see those double-digit percentages of captured adult populations to know that what Nubank is doing is replicable.
I think it's you're sort of at an interesting stage right now in Nubank where they've proven it in Brazil, but there's a lot of it's sort of like we're sort of just sitting here on our hands waiting for the bet to work or not. Yeah. I suspect strongly that it will. I think there's virtually no reason it wouldn't. I think if you look at Colombia, for example, it's the exact same situation as Brazil. You have 4 banks. They all pay 9% dividends. The next bank after those top 4 banks is like 1/20th of the size, right? So I think you're looking at it in it just makes sense to me that it could come in and disrupt things. And I think, like, for example, I was looking at Bradesco, just because I was curious. I'm like, what's the customer service like? Like, what's the customer experience like? Even like if you go to Nubank's website, it's very clean, very easy to understand. You know, here are the products. Here's what we do. Yada yada yada. The app's even cleaner. And then if you go to, like, I don't know if you can pull it up or check a screenshot or something, but it is brutal. It is so it just doesn't make any sense. It's sort of confusingly laid out. It's not very well. It doesn't easily or clearly communicate what they're doing. Like, they have no online strategy, essentially. You can tell it's just an old bank that's been around for ages. And they're like, oh, well, I guess, what's that?
For which bank?
Bradesco, I think. Let me pull it up.
Okay.
I think it's BBR or BBD or something like that.
Yeah, I'm okay. I can probably bring it up in post and just overlay it.
Yeah, BBD is the ticker, is the US ticker. It's banco.bradesco.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, it's brutal. So it's like if you even just do, like, sort of a modicum of, like, you know, sort of first party research looking into, like, what is it actually like to be a customer of this bank? Like, Nubank is like 10 times. It's just, you know, it just makes way more sense if that's from a consumer perspective. It's similar to what we would experience from, like, a good financial app in the US.
Yeah.
Versus it's sort of like, you know, oh, there's some Midwest regional bank and they just made a website. Like, that's sort of what they're competing against, but in Colombia. So I haven't looked too much into Mexico. Obviously, it's a bigger market, so I probably should have. But I think Colombia is a very similar scenario. There's really no reason that I suspect that they won't be able to expand, especially with all the goodwill and potentially sort of word of mouth that sort of crosses borders and things like that. I know there's a bit of a language barrier as well, but in general, I think it's
yeah.
I think it's bullish.
That's the thing that I think is crazy about going for Brazil first and then Mexico. It's like there's language differences, there's currency differences, you know, you have localization problems. But if they can get past all that, you're looking at a potentially multi-country, massive fintech, which you can look at like Revolut or any of these ones where, you know, I think they're in 40 countries now. Revolut is, or 36 countries, and trying to get clients from all of them. Yet Nubank has more clientele just in these 3 countries than Revolut does across everything. And
I mean, to some degree, right? Like, that's less impressive. Like, if you look at, for example, as a proxy, and this isn't exactly right, but, you know, if you look at what Facebook makes on the average North American consumer and the average European consumer versus what they make on the average Latin American user, right? The user, it's like, you know, pennies, right?
Sure.
Comparatively. So it's not, and I think that's sort of a rough, you know, it's sort of a bad way of thinking about it, I guess, but it's just one of those things where it's like the earnings power of the person sort of in USD terms. It's a, you know, I think the main issue, honestly, if you look long term, is probably going to be NU's US listing, right? It's almost like it would be better if you just, you know, could invest into the company, you know, through an Interactive Brokers account and just purchase it literally in Brazil, because the fact that they're going to have to repatriate all of their profits into USD, the USD has gone on a massive run against pretty much every developed nation or, you know, sort of emerging market currency for the last, I don't know, 2 decades, at least 3 decades. So, and there's really no reason that's would ever stop. Well, you know, aside from sort of massive geopolitical things, so probably, you know, be outside the scope, but generally, I think that's a huge disadvantage, is the fact that they're operating in non-USD, which also may, you know, but it may make it overlooked, right? So it's sort of a, you know, a bit of both, but I think that could be actually potentially another risk, is just the fact that it doesn't operate and we'll have to repatriate at worse and worse rates over time.
So one of the largest risks, in my opinion, like, and we've already talked about it a couple times, but I'm going to keep prying at it a little bit, is market saturation. You know, obviously, I don't think that Nubank is going to get taken out by another competitor or anything like this. But the second that you have a relationship with, let's say, 65% of Brazil, how high can it get, right? 70%. And you're making consistent revenues from these clients, year-over-year growth rates will start to take a hit, even though you have such an amazingly profitable business. Do you think that this has a potential for just market cap compression because people want to put less of a premium on a company that might not see as many customers coming onto the platform year over year if they're, fully capped out on a country that is by far the largest in population in Latin Am?
Mm. Yeah, so I think there's sort of two angles to look at this. There's sort of the, the low hanging fruit argument, which is that, they've already, as you said, they've already captured such a huge percentage of sort of adults within Brazil who already use it, at least for some transactions. It may not be their main bank, but they use the credit card, they use the WhatsApp payments, whatever. The other way of looking at it is it's sort of a good problem to have, right? Like if you've, oh no, we've captured like, more than half of an adult population in like
Right.
a top 20 economy as long-term customers.
Yeah.
Oh no, right? Oh, our growth is slowing. I don't think it's an issue with their growth because their growth is so high, it just naturally will come down. It has to. You can't grow infinitely, at 100% per year. I think that'll moderate probably around like 20%, not over the long term, but probably 5 years from now, you'll see them growing at 20% year for year.
Sure.
5%, something like that.
Sure.
But at the same time, that's sort of also where you have a little bit of the demographic advantage, right? So if you look at all the developed countries in the world and sort of the developed nations, and even the ones that are, aren't categorized as that, but are like China, for example, you're seeing super low fertility rates, right? And the advantage to investing in LATAM is that it's sort of like for lack of a better way of putting this, it's sort of like a better Africa almost. There are problems, right? There are, active, there are governments that aren't, maybe sort of friendly to air quotes like Western values. You've got corruption all over the place. Rule of law, again, maybe not as good as you'd find in like the US or, the UK or something like that. However, the demographics are amazing, right? So you've still got birth rates of around like 1.8, and, Korea right now is at like 1.1. Something like that. So obviously that's like cherry picking the worst one, but there's a lot of fertility rate issues. If you think, okay, in one generation or two generations, two and a half generations, you're going to see half the people in developed countries as you would, elsewhere. I think you're going to have a much more gradual sort of decline, with that issue in Latin America. So there's sort of the demographic buoy, if you will, to the saturation question. There's no reason in my mind why, if it's able to capture sort of a latent existing market, people as they age up into the, people who are like 15 right now in Brazil, like who are they going to bank with? Probably Nubank, right?
Sure.
It's just got such incredible brand strength. It's got such, positive word of mouth and NPS. So I see it, it's sort of, like I don't think it'll have an issue with the multiple, because the other thing that's unique about Nubank is it's not outrageously expensive, right? Like what's the most expensive stock right now in the stock market? CrowdStrike, something like that. It's got like 28 price to sales, some ridiculous, and it's growing. I couldn't come up with a number, but maybe like somewhere between 20 and 40% per year. Nubank is less than a third of that in terms of the amount of growth that they have, or in terms of the multiple, but it's got triple the amount of growth. So I think it's mispriced depending on the comp. The other thing that I think people sort of miss is a lot of people are looking at this like a bank, right? And ultimately, long term, it probably will produce profits like a bank, which is not a bad thing. But in the short term, if you look at like LTV to CAC, which is something I mentioned, briefly mentioned earlier, but it literally is like 30x, right? The cost of acquiring a customer is, a few dollars, and the average long-term value is like 120, something like that. I don't know if you have the number off the top of your head, but it's like in the hundreds of dollars.
I don't have the exact number because it's hard to find churn rate for them. So I'm only going off the 30 times that they said publicly, but without knowing the churn, it's hard for me to run the numbers myself.
Yeah, right. And so, so it's a little bit, but it gives you a ballpark.
Sure.
And I guess ultimately what I'm saying is like, that's an incredible number for any business in the world, right? Yeah. So you can strip out the fact that it's a fintech. You can strip out the fact that it's a bank.
By 10x.
if you were to look, what's that?
I said it's good for any business by 10x.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I think, I think the target that you're looking to hit, for example, like at PropNotes, right? So we run investment research. If we hit 5-to-1 LTV to CAC, we're like, oh, that's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So 30x is just mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
So, Yeah, I think if you look at it on those metrics, it's sort of, obviously it's a bank, so you always have to comp that, but it's some of the metrics that are coming out of this company are just incredible. And I think I'm not too worried about long term. I'm not too worried about saturation. I'll put it this way. I wouldn't expect multiple expansion from here. I don't think it'll get more expensive on what it's currently doing, but you're still pricing in 40% EPS growth every year. Like that just will produce such amazing returns, So I don't think, there's room for it to go down. I don't think there's room for it to go up. Like, I don't think it'll ever trade at like 12 times sales or 15 times sales.
Sure.
But the growth is just so high that it kind of doesn't matter. Yeah, so that's sort of where I'm, from like, taking it from a business into like an investment and trading perspective. That's where I'm thinking.
That's a really good point. I like that. One thing that I'd ask you after going off that, do you have any medium-term goals, long-term goals for the actual price of the stock and why potentially you'd be invested?
Let me pull up a chart real quick, just so I can answer that accurately. Also, I'm just realizing I look super pink because of my lighting here.
It doesn't look bad.
All right, let me pull it up here. Let me just pull up Nubank. I just want to check something to see what they're doing.
Is it your rate of return thing? Because I have it open as well.
No. I'm looking at. I want to see their dilution. Okay, it's been stable. So I'm sorry. What was your question?
Any medium-term or long-term goals for the price of the stock?
I think. So in the article, I think I argued for about 15 price target over the coming years, somewhere in that vicinity.
Yeah, I think it was $13 to $15 by end of 2025 or something.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. I think you've seen about 15% appreciation since I wrote the article. That's fortunate, right? I don't write articles, just thinking like, oh, this is going to be a smash hit over the next like month, essentially.
Right.
It's just that, it could have gone down 15%, and I feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
I think
I'd probably be much happier.
Right. Yeah. I can buy some more. I think there's really no reason for me to sort of deviate from what I've put forward there. There's really it's not like their growth projections have really changed, right? I think it'll grow essentially at the same rate that they're, that I sort of put forward in the article. So I think roughly that sounds about right. Long term, like super long term, I think, like if they're able to capture a fair amount of LATAM, you're probably looking at like $25 to $35 a share, but with solid capital returns. So right now they're not really. The reason I wanted to check the dilution is because some companies that grow this quickly are just diluting. And they're not, because they have access to incredibly cheap funding with the deposits that are people depositing with them, et cetera.
Yeah.
So they don't have, like, all of their cost advantages are just so massive compared to all of the established banks. It's just incredible. And obviously, if you look at their net income, you can be like, oh, it's 11%. Like, why are all the big banks at 25? And it's like, well, they're just investing so much in all the growth in other places.
Yeah.
Because the market opportunity is just so massive. But I think long term, you'll probably see pretty considerable capital returns to shareholders. Maybe not dividends, and might buy shares back. I don't know exactly what it looks like, but I think over the long term, depending on how much they saturate, I think once it's always tricky to sort of nail when a company is going to go from growth to sort of clicking the profitability lever or pulling the profitability lever. I don't know exactly when that will be, but I would not be surprised. I'll put it this way: I would not be surprised to see this at like a $30 price point in the next 5 to 6 years. I think that's reasonable.
Sure. Yeah, because I was thinking in my head whenever you were talking about $13 to $15 price point by the end of 2025. It's like, do you not think that you could find a better position out there, or potentially that you would be more comfortable holding between now and potentially $13 2 years from now?
So there's two questions, right? It's sort of what's the total return potential, and then what's like the certainty of those returns, right?
Sure.
So I think that's like base case would be it going up 50% over the next 2 years, right? 30 to 50%. It's trading at like $10 right now. For sure. Base case to me is it going up 30 to 50% over the next 2 years. I think a lot of people, and not necessarily base case, maybe not conservative, but like I'm pretty sure that that's a conservative estimate based on the
Sure.
growth rates, based on all the things we talked about. So I think a lot of people would be pretty happy with that. I think, I guess it really depends on sort of what your goals are as an investor, right? There
Yeah.
are things that may grow more, but it's just sort of, it turns into like a confidence, a confidence factor question. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, like there are like probably, I don't know. I won't speculate on like random stock. I mean, if you want, unless you want me to, but I think there are stocks that could absolutely outperform Nubank. But it's just one of those things where it's just like, if you have a lot of money sitting around, it's sort of a question of what's a lotto ticket. It's right, sort of speaking as a trader, former trader. It's just, oh, this
Yeah.
is a lotto versus this is something you could actually pour significant resources into. This is a real business. There's real things behind it. It's not just sort of, an accounting, like, there's a lot of sort of special situations that you could maybe say, okay, this is going to go up 200, 300% over the next whatever. But I think the confidence interval is quite high on this.
I mean, I've been buying this company pretty aggressively over the last 12 months, a little bit over 12 months. First buy was like mid-January.
Nice, good price.
Of last year. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
And all I've done is like increase my average cost basis. So I've actually been averaging upward.
That's
Which,
fine. Right? That's what you do in a winter, right? That's
yeah, exactly. So I'm not actually saying to, why are you buying this stock if it's only going to go to 13? I mean, I'm going to continue to hold it as well. But I just wanted your sort of frame of how you look at a company like this, or if you just try to go after your potential biggest winner. Because I do also try to weigh out the likelihood of it not happening. And Nubank is, I don't know. I don't like saying things like a certainty. It's definitely not a certainty. But I've been looking at a lot of their competitors, and even a lot of these companies, fintechs in America, and they don't have the setup that Nubank has, not even remotely close.
No.
If I'm going to really speculate, I think that Nubank will be the super app, the WeChat of LATAM. Like,
Interesting. Okay.
I think they're going full on into commerce.
Fill me in a little bit on that. I mean, I obviously touched on sort of what exists now and sort of the future potential vertical and horizontal expansion. I have no, like, this is, so I said to Tanner before we jumped on, and just basically, like, I've seen that he's made some videos about it, so he might be more knowledgeable than me on a bit of it, which I fully expect. So could you, fill me in a little bit? I think that my brain immediately just says, if that's the case, higher multiple, basically. Right.
Yeah, I
Like, I'm
mean,
not sure it won't show up in the top line immediately, but it'll be like, oh, Apple's doing services, time to like triple the, price to earnings.
so they have a couple different products. New Marketplace is their service to allow people to buy products through the app.
Okay.
They have another service called Purple Pages, which is the businesses exclusively on Nubank that sell products can sell products directly to Nubank customers as like sort of dual-sided commerce, the way Shopify does it with the Shop app, right?
Okay.
So exclusive, deals, but only to Shopify consumers from Shopify merchants. Same thing in Nubank with Purple Pages. New Tap is one of their things where they allow you to like NFC, take card information directly from an iPhone to take payments cheaper than you would through any other service, to allow for payments directly to small, mid-sized businesses. I just think there's a ton of these things that they're starting to roll out that are completely like unappreciated right now, that as they scale, as they get 50-60% of Brazilian populations with exclusive deals, that people have, not only will businesses be forced onto news platform because that's where the majority of the population is. A lot, like, I don't know. I'm a big fan of dual-sided commerce right now. Like, I'm a holder in Square, I'm a holder in Shopify, I'm a holder in Nubank, I'm a holder in PayPal. I love this sort of space. So just falling in love with it from Nubank's perspective as well, because A
Yeah.
bank where you already have all your money, they already have your details. Uh, they
Yeah.
have, you know, the businesses side of the money and everything like this. They can control that rate. They don't need a lot of extra technology, and they keep the margin. I love that.
You know what you're saying is interesting. I think I've thought about this a lot. I used to work at TradingView. I don't know if you're familiar with TradingView at
Yep.
all. Yeah, so I used to work at TradingView, and I mean they have what 40 million, sort of monthly active users.
Okay.
I think that's public. And one of the things that I've realized working there
I
and
think
just
that's
sort of
public.
no, like they're a private company, obviously. It's
Yeah.
no, but
Yeah.
it says it on their page. It's you can go on Similar Web and see. I mean, that's
Gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah.
So trading is obviously a huge business, and what I learned sort of working there and working in a few other places, and also just now starting my own business is sort of the value. Everything these days is sort of like you can view it from like top of funnel, right? At least in the consumer side. So B2B is a bit different. But if you're dealing with consumers, there's such incredible leverage to having a relationship with a consumer.
Yeah.
And very few companies have as deep a relationship with someone as a bank, right? It's, like you trust these people with your, life savings or,
Yeah.
your insurance products, your investments, et cetera. So to me, it's one of those things where they have, I've never even really considered this up to right now, but from what I saw at TradingView, the leverage that you have from having 40 million people who are interested in finance is incredible. Like you'd be silly to be a broker and not be integrated on TradingView. It's similar with Nubank, I think, potentially. And I think that the key there is maybe that there's just not a lot of competition. I think that obviously if you look at from the other direction, it seems harder. So for example, if Amazon offered checking accounts, I think they'd have, I'm curious to see how that would look. But I think with Nubank, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying. And just the fact that they have such a huge top of funnel, they have such a strong relationship with those people. And such a high level of trust and brand, again, as I mentioned, I think it's entirely plausible. But the value of that relationship is massive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Just having the leverage to say, hey, we can reach 60% of Brazilian adults with a push notification, right? Like, yeah.
No, the market for small mid-sized businesses in Brazil is huge. Like I think I saw where was the study? Let me see if I can pull it up really quick.
Yeah, it's massive.
And they've only very slightly broken into that market. And I think that that's a huge vertical that not many people talk about. The one that everyone's talking about is getting more into the, high net worth, which I think is yet to be seen. I mean, they have the ultraviolet card, but even whenever you look at that, their delinquency rates versus their competitors actually gets like rapidly worse the higher end customer that they get to comparatively to their competitors.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they have really, really good underwriting for really low end consumers and not as good underwriting for really, really high end consumers.
They have that. Well, look, they have their own credit engine. As I mentioned, it's called like Nux. I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
And my assumption is that they don't have as much data on high net worth consumers, and thus you're seeing high levels of delinquency. So it's really just sort of I think that'll be tuned into whatever systems they build. I think that won't be a problem. Going forward, or I think they'll sort that out. That's sort of like a high priority. I think also like broadly, I have seen a lot of comments that are like, oh, people in the upper middle class and wealthy people in Brazil, they have like a card, but like they won't do real transactions of any real value with Nubank. And I think that's obviously what it sort of encapsulates that concern. And to be fair, that there's sort of some validity to that. For example, if you look at the Gini coefficient globally, Brazil is very high, which means it has a very high level of wealth that's concentrated within the top, chunk of people. And so that will be valuable for Nubank to go after. I just got back from South Africa. It has the highest in the world. Signing up users alone does not qualify the bank to sort of print money indefinitely. You need a quality of consumer as well. It's obviously less bad in Brazil than South Africa, but I suspect I think it's valuable for them, but I think there's more greenfield, or even, so I don't know if you're familiar with like the term blue ocean, but essentially it
Yep.
means they're okay. Yeah, I don't say it's like a blue ocean strategy for them to go for sort of a flywheel marketplace business that sits on top of their already existing sort of payments and banking infrastructure. But that to me does make a lot of sense.
I mean, the problem with saying blue ocean around anything that Nubank does is that they're kind of in every single they're in every
Right,
single area now.
right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think that people are really underestimating for Nubank as well is their new invest platform. Like,
Mm,
it's
yeah,
growing so freaking fast right now. If you follow their you know product pages, like their new developments, they're almost all, like, I'd say probably 60 to 80% of all their new product developments are all for new invest. They're putting a ton of money in that direction. um and I think that you're going to start to see people say, hey, instead of this being a credit card business, is what it was 5 years ago, to now being a credit card deposit business, it's going to be credit card deposit invest business in the next year, 2 years.
I don't think there's any question in my mind that they will just, over the next, maybe let's say 5 years, go full service into every, that
Yeah.
includes complex insurance, well, I guess insurance is sort of a broad category, but insurance, um, maybe sort of not just consumer loans, but maybe look at a more robust sort of mortgage business. There's
Well,
a lot of different directions they could go. And that again is like, it's the cross-selling opportunity. So they sign up all these people, the region gets wealthier. There's more people being born in the region than elsewhere. So you've sort of got those long tailwinds. And then in the short term, you've just got that verticalization. So there's no question in my mind that they'll go from cards to cards and deposit to cards and deposit and invest and cards deposit and everything else.
well,
I think it'll just take a matter of time, but I think, yeah, it's really obvious. Banking is such a well-established business model that they don't really have to reinvent the wheel with what they can monetize.
well, you know what? That is the cool thing about Nubank, though, is like, people can say stuff like, oh, well, the really high net worth don't really have this, consumer behavior right now of going to a fintech or something like this. Like, yeah, not right now. Back
Right.
in 2014, whenever Nubank opened up, the consumer behavior was not to open up a credit card online.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so, Nubank is tackling challenges one at a time. And I
Yeah.
think the different part is that with a really, like, this is even what Nubank's management said. We're not a bank that is technologically enabled. We're a complete tech company tackling the problem of banking.
Yeah.
And so, some of these different incumbent banks can try to find band-aid solutions to offer online solutions and have an omnipresence, but the truth is that you're not going to be able to have the user interface or user experience that you would that Nubank is offering with the complete tech stack that they have, that they've poured a decade into. you know
Yeah. I
that I
think
think is the big difference.
I would not be shocked if one of Nubank's competitors was bought at all. Like Neon, I think is a pretty popular competitor. They've got tens of millions of, or not, maybe not tens of millions, millions, somewhere in that range. Neon C6 is another one. I would not be shocked if they were sort of acqui-hired into some of the larger banks, existing banks.
So this is from 2013, the end of 2013. So these numbers are going to be, or sorry, halfway through 2013. So these numbers are going to be a little bit different.
13
Neon
or
had
23?
15 million users. C6 had 16 million.
Tanner, wait.
Yeah,
2023 or 2013?
2023. Did I say 2013?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was like, really? Wow, they were crushing it back in 2013.
No. 2023. Midway
No,
through
okay.
2023.
Yeah.
The largest competitor was PicPay at 62 million accounts, and Mercado Pago with 43 million accounts.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
In
those are,
Brazil.
yeah, I mean, so that's another, like, that's actually, to be fair, I hadn't really considered this. That's potentially another risk factor is Mercado Libre. right? I don't know if you how much you've looked into them, but I'm
I'm a
personally
shareholder.
incredibly What's that?
I'm a shareholder.
Oh, good. Okay, so
Yeah.
but they're kind of doing it the reverse, right? They're going the Amazon Marketplace route into all of the adjacent services, which
Yeah.
includes payments, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's a potential competitor. I don't see it though. I don't think people like having a marketplace and a bank all in one. At least if it starts as a marketplace. I don't know. Have you ever used like Acorns, for example, the U.S. company?
So yeah, I'm a Canadian, so I haven't used
Okay,
any of those services. I haven't even used Venmo. I haven't used Cash App. It's
killing me.
crazy. We got nothing up here.
There was one word you said a moment ago where I'm like, is this guy a Canuck? Is this guy Canadian?
How about
Um,
that?
you said like a boot, yeah, a boot. I grew up in Buffalo, so it's I'm very familiar.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. So where were we? Oh, right. I think I don't know. I just don't see. Yeah, I think we're bullish, right? That's what we can say.
I
That's what we can say on it.
if I wanted to say, because this is where at least I think you were going, is what I wanted to say was that the United States, honestly, is not adopting fintech nearly as fast as other industries.
Hmm.
And so, although I appreciate us like North American people saying like, oh, well, I don't really want one app that does everything for me. And then you
Hmm.
look at certain geographies where it's like, no, they're very happy using
Hmm.
one app for every service. And then I see the adoption of Brazil, of the Brazilian population and Latin American population adopting things like Pix, their instant payment solution, the
Yeah.
fastest ever adopted instant payment solution in the world.
Yeah.
Now they're talking about Drex, their uh, digital or sorry, central bank digital currency for the Brazilian real.
Hmm.
It's like they are going full force into digital payments, and Nubank's the biggest player.
Hmm.
I don't think that like if let me see if I can find this too. I think I saw a study talking about how Nubank actually, or sorry, Brazil has a larger percentage of their population using fintechs than America does.
That doesn't surprise me at all. I don't know I don't know if your parents are still around, but my parents are not very tech enabled,
Sure, sure. Yeah.
and
Um,
that's a good chunk of people who've had banks for the last, bank accounts for the last,
so
however
this
long.
was a survey done in 2023 by
Hmm.
Atlantico saying that the United States has 32%. I can just share this with you. I can just throw it up on screen. The United States has
Oh, there you go.
32% fintech usage
Mm,
or fintech products, where Brazil has 35%, Argentina at 58%.
yeah,
And then Mexico here down at 12%, potentially Chile at 7. That's
that
another
that
thing too. Is
chart
like,
that chart is why I'm excited about Chile more broadly. But yeah,
yeah, no, people point to Brazil. It's like, yeah, look how fast they adopted fintech products. And the one thing I always say to that is like, yeah, because of Nubank, like literally, like,
yeah,
like
yeah,
this is not some small player. They have a relationship with 50% of the population. They, not single-handedly, but a majority of the reason why that percent rose so fast was due to one particular company that came onto the market.
yeah.
So these Mexican numbers and these Chilean numbers, these will change as Nubank starts to dominate.
I think there's something you said. So two things. One is consumer preferences within North America. I think are a bit different than places that are. It's
Sure.
even just sort of like it's sort of you've heard of the whole phenomenon where it's sort of leapfrogging, right? It's like in the U.S. everyone has a landline, and now they're just sort of getting rid of landlines. But for example, in like Africa, it's like you went from nothing to a cell phone. Like you just went straight from.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those things where it's everyone. A lot of people in the U.S., for example, just have established banking relationships, and it's like, why would I bother,
Yeah.
right? You sort of have a well-built legacy infrastructure, and Brazil had that with sort of the four big oligopoly banks, but also had sort of a unique. It was sort of uniquely set up to also have a new bank come in and do
Well,
very
and,
well.
and an unbelievably high percentage of unbanked population. Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
that is very different. I totally agree with that leapfrog thing. We're even kind of having it in Canada where we have a set number, 5, 6 banks that dominate everything, and no fintech action at all.
Yeah.
And because they're probably like a 7 out of 10, okay, that no one looks for,
Right. Yeah.
whenever the 8 comes out, it's like, hey, look how it is better. And people are like, but it's not good enough
Yeah.
for us to jump. Where Nubank probably has a better fintech experience than I do here in Canada, but at least, it's probably a 9, but you're going from a 0 to 9,
Yeah.
like instantly.
Yeah. It's the leapfrog. What I was going to say about Acorns earlier, just which I think is relevant to this discussion, is simply that basically it's an app that lets you, they have like a roundup feature. So whenever you spend money, it'll just round it up, and then 30 cents, they'll put it, they'll invest in the S&P or whatever. And they've sort of grown out sort of vertically or sort of vertically and horizontally. So now they offer, or not, I guess not horizontally, but vertically. So now they offer checking, savings. They just did this whole thing with the Rock. They have this new debit card or whatever. But they have so it's 3 pillars. They have investing, they have checking or banking, and then they have earning. And it's sort of this unique, I've never really thought about this, but essentially they have a partnership with all these different brands, Walmart, Uber, whoever. And whenever you spend money with that brand, you get a higher level of
Cashback,
essentially. Yeah. And so that, for them, they round it up and invest it. But, you can sort of imagine that with a player like Nubank. I think that almost makes even more sense than a marketplace. The marketplace is very difficult to build, obviously, but that's extremely low hanging fruit, right? Is just using, again, the power of these relationships. You're so top of funnel that you have such high leverage to basically say, hey, 90 million people, or 96, as you said, or 96 million people, if you shop with these brands, you'll get a higher level of some sort of, transactional, some marketing spend essentially for Walmart, and they'll, get a huge percentage of that sort of they're almost going direct to the source of literally where the money is. So I think that's a potential model. I don't know if they're considering that or if they brought it up, but that sort of comes to mind as well. I could easily see them launching some sort of platform like that, or some sort of feature. But it's just when you establish yourself so predominantly in someone's life, there are just so many monetization routes available, just because of that sort of one-to-one marketing potential and relationship. So I know I've been hammering home on that and the brand and trust and blah blah blah, but I think that's just so valuable if you really zoom out long term, that's huge.
You really don't have to look too much further whenever looking at Nubank of just customer growth and then continuous activity growth, primary banking account use.
Yeah.
Those 3 things tell the picture of customers are cross-selling like crazy. They love the experience. They're having good satisfaction. And it's just a matter for me of if they can do it in a different geography. I know that they have won Brazil.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just a matter of, can they do this in other geographies and be successful?
I mean, again, this is one of those ones where I sat down for a day, did all of the research on this company, and wrote a report from the perspective of ostensibly a generalist. You have done a lot more research long-term and sort of broadly around fintech. So I suspect that you would know more about how those expansion efforts are going. From my understanding, they're going, sort of well, progressing as expected. Everything, all the notes that I've read from management, at least in preparing this article, were
for Nubank, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, they do share their revenue broken down by geography, so you can kind of see how they're expanding that way. Plus,
right. I guess I have nothing to compare it to, so I can't really tell. So I guess from your perspective, are they doing a good job? I'd be keen to hear.
I mean, I don't follow too many of the Latin American their competitors. I have a couple things I look at, Mercado Pago, C6 Bank, Neon. I see their growth rates and everything and what percentage of the total market share that they have in Brazil, but not individually those companies and how they've expanded. Mainly only the public companies. I don't get too much into what is Chime's story, what is Revolut's story, these sorts of things, because they're just not publicly traded. So
yeah, I guess I'm just thinking more, how will you know? When will you say, oh, Nubank has been able to successfully replicate what they've done elsewhere? Is it just sort of
Yeah,
feel. Do you know what I mean? Like that's ultimately just what I'm trying to figure out is, obviously I know plenty about the stock from a generalist perspective, but as someone who has made videos about it and talked about it and looked at it in depth, I'd be, I don't know if you've been tracking that or sort of if you have a certain idea in mind of when.
not something that I could say off the top of my head of like, this is the metric that I need before I can say that they've won Mexico.
Yeah.
I guess because the, Mexico checking account products are so new, like
Mm.
I need to start seeing, primary checking accounts like that for me across all of these fintechs is like, that's the bread and butter is deposit accounts.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
they're so new into it. They're so new into it with Colombia as well that I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do with personal loans there. Um, what are the delinquencies going to be like? What are your underwriting standards for a completely different geography?
Mm.
And until then, I'm not going to be hopefully optimistic that I just because they've done it once that they can do it again because things have changed. There's many competitors.
Yeah, but have things changed? Like, what's the concern? Like, what as I laid out the risks earlier around Nubank, what are
Mhm.
the risks to it expanding in other markets? Is it? I mean, I guess you could say air quotes like local knowledge, but what like is that to me isn't something that couldn't be overcome or like do you see what I'm saying? Like, what are the in your mind? Why would they fail? Like, why would it not work? I guess.
Because I find it very hard for people to point to competitors who have done it in the banking space and say that it's successful.
But
Um,
has anyone done it in Latin America? Like, I think if you can look at like, I
yeah,
don't.
like look at C Limited. They tried bringing their banking space over from Southeast Asia
Indonesia.
over to LATAM, and then they left.
Yeah, I
PayPal,
think that's a very big cultural difference between Indonesia and Brazil versus Brazil and
but
Colombia.
David has even talked about going to they want to break into African markets. Well, it's like okay, I'll believe it
Mhm.
when I see
That
it.
to me, maybe it's just a geography thing. That to me would be much more okay. Let's see how it goes. Like to me, and this, yeah, again, I don't see. I see that sort of it being relatively high probability. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, yeah.
I realize I see we're just coming up on an hour. Are there any other big questions you wanted to ask me or anything else before we?
No, this has been
I'm happy to chat for a bit longer, but I just didn't know if you had anything else that we needed to discuss before.
no. I was going to wrap it up practically right after that. So
Oh, there you go.
time flew. Time flies
Yeah,
when
it
you're
really
having fun.
did.
So
Yeah.
Andrew, thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on the show. I'll have your Seeking Alpha link down in the description down below. Is there anything else that you would like to promote?
Yeah, I mean, PropNotes, investment research firm, we recently launched. We're focused on finding sort of a combination of well-priced stocks that are also have strong momentum. If you're interested in that kind of thing and sort of a medium-term trading / investing time horizon, then give us a look. Free trial, yada yada yada.
Perfect. Well,
Yeah.
thank you everyone for watching. Bye for now.
Cheers.